Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tuesday, July 26th, Cuyahoga County Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
And just as a reminder to all who are in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Here. Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome, Mr. Miller. As always, public comment.
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
In your packets, we have the meeting minutes of July 12th. If they're in order, I'll accept a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. (2022-0222).
Resolution number 2022-0222, awarding a total sum not to exceed $1,217,000 to the City of Rocky River for the purpose of constructing a firearms range for the Rocky River Police Department.
Who speaks for River? Mayor, welcome. You want to introduce your team? And it seems we have an all-star backup for you, with Mr. Greenspan being here also to witness.
They are an all-star team. Thank you so much, Chairman and County Councilman Gallagher. Yes, if I could begin by obviously thanking you, Chairman, along with the members of the committee, and really all of Cuyahoga Council. We really want to thank you for creating this very effective process for funding important and critical community projects throughout the county, making this sort of a streamlined process that we can present necessary projects to. So we greatly appreciate that. I'd like to make a few introductions. Our council president, Jim Moran, is in attendance. Councilman Tom Hunt, our Ward 1 councilman and chairman of our safety committee. Rich Snyder, our director of public safety and service. Rich. And our police chief, and I'll introduce him at greater length towards the end of my remarks. I have some very brief remarks, but so happy to answer any questions you may have. I thought I'd start with just a brief history of the police station project in its entirety, talk a little bit about the scope of this current project that we're requesting funding for, and just a little bit about our ability to bring this project to closure. So, we had a very extensive and engaging feasibility study that evaluated all the future needs of our law enforcement professionals in our community and really beyond. We opened up the new police station in the fall of 2021. It replaced an old police station that was built in the 1950s, actually, so it really needed some updating. In addition to several improvements, there were plans in the new facility for a modern police firearms range capable of year-round indoor training, and that was quite unique to the region. During the 2-year construction period, and yes, it took 2 years, we had a demolition and then a rebuild. There were many delays and disruptions, both with supply chain and construction workforce, largely as a result, almost primarily a result of COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic. This caused prices to increase and it prevented the completion of the range in a timely fashion. Currently, the building itself is built. So the electrical, the plumbing, all of that is complete along with the building, leaving the project ready to proceed immediately. This proposal that is in front of you for the $1.2 million would outfit the already constructed 2,260 square feet of space that's designed and built to ballistic and sound mitigation specifications to accommodate firearms training, and it includes an armory as well as a control room. In close proximity to the range is a large classroom with all the necessary technology, and also an 8,000 square foot garage, both spaces to be used for training. So this facilitates year-round classes not only firearms, but weapons retention and transition, vehicle stops, approaches, and so much more, all providing what would be classroom work combined with scenario-based training and range time. In terms of project readiness, as I described, we completely built out the building that would house the firing range. So HVAC, the plumbing, electrical, all of that has been taken care of. Specifications for the range have been prepared, and the project is ready for the bidding process. So we are good to go, as they say, shovel ready. In terms of leveraging what the city has already invested in this project, which built the new police station, the city spent $12.7 million. We did not have to go to the ballot for those dollars. We are in the process of bonding a little less than $10 million, so the balance was paid for out of the general fund of the city of Rocky River. And so currently, as we've stated, this $1.2 million will be used for the remaining build-out of the interior, which includes a restroom, the armory, the control room, as I mentioned, and of course the firearms range components that include the backstop, the baffling, the shooting stalls, and the ventilation system. I think one of the important questions that were asked of us to respond to in this application process was the capability of the applicant. So the City of Rocky River, we have constructed many projects, all of them successfully, on time, at or under budget. We're very pleased to say, and we believe that this project will be the same, and of course is compared to the entire project of the police station is a small component. But I think what's really important, as I turn the presentation over to the chief, who's really going to stress the importance of ongoing multi-jurisdictional scenario-based training and the impact of having well-coordinated trained response with an emphasis on regional coordination and communication. This is a critical goal. It's a critical goal of supporting proficient and prepared and confident law enforcement professionals that serve all of our communities in Cuyahoga County. I'm very pleased to introduce our chief to present more of that information. Chief George Lichman has considerable experience in police training as an Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy instructor. He is instructed in areas of advanced law enforcement training and curriculum development. He has served as a subject matter expert for OPATA in community diversity and procedural justice, domestic violence. He is the chairman of the Cuyahoga County College Law Enforcement Training Advisory Committee, and recently developed a 2-hour class on bias awareness that was a part of the larger training effort for Cuyahoga County law enforcement personnel. Chief Lichman is a certified law enforcement executive, a member of the Police Executive Research Forum. He has worked both on developing assessment centers and assessing police promotional candidates locally and nationally. Chief Lichman's experience and dedication to ongoing training within the police profession demonstrates not only his willingness, but the city's willingness and ability to utilize the proposed facility to its fullest to benefit our region and our county. Thank you. With that, I'll introduce Chief George Lichman.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. Happy to present to you, and also excited to the opportunity to move the project forward. As you heard from the mayor, we're requesting funds for the completion of the final phase of our new police station, the Firearms Range. This range will be the longest indoor range capable of rifle training in our area. A classroom and an 8,000 square foot garage in the same building allow for one-stop training opportunities. Currently, we're dependent on a few outdoor ranges in the region for rifle training. They're far away, some as much as a half-hour to 40-minute drive time. They're difficult to schedule, and our Ohio climate limits their practical use for several months during the year. And in addition, none of them, or few of them, none that we use, have a classroom available. A firearms range used for police purposes is different than public ranges. Good training is not merely standing at a stall and shooting. Instead, we train dynamically, moving and shooting, often at multiple targets, and utilizing cover and concealment. We also work on when not to shoot, including weapons transitions, switching between lethal and less lethal weapons, and recognizing opportunities to de-escalate. We're able to set up barricades, cover, and even temporary movable walls to simulate rooms, to practice building search tactics, and create scenarios similar to those officers will face while on duty. Firearms training should not be static, and this range will allow for movement, live fire, and classroom debriefing. The garage will allow for vehicle stop and approach training, further allowing officers to demonstrate skills learned in the classroom and range in reality-based scenarios. Frequent and realistic training creates competent and confident officers, increasing the likelihood of the best possible response in dangerous situations. In police work and in other settings, people react how they are trained. Training has evolved significantly over the years as a result. This range will allow for more realistic and more frequent training to best prepare our police. Educators know that people learn differently. Some are visual, some auditory, and others by doing. With the completed firearms range and our classroom and garage, will be well suited for all learning styles. Our facility, combined with Rocky River Police personnel that include peace officer training instructors certified to teach firearms, taser, pepper spray, building searches, vehicle stops and approaches, and more, will be a valuable regional asset. We work closely with our neighboring West Shore law enforcement agencies through shared radio communications, SWAT team, hazardous devices unit, and a mobile field force, which is crowd control, the West Shore Enforcement Bureau task force, and we rely on each other nearly daily for mutual aid responses. This project will enhance these partnerships. Working and training together allows for a unified, well-coordinated police response to any emergency, including active shooting. We're pleased to provide letters of support of this project from the chiefs of police of the cities of Bay Village, Fairview Park, Lakewood, North Olmsted, Westlake, and the Cleveland Metro Parks, and the director of the West Shore Enforcement Bureau. Thank you. I believe you also received some packets with some photographs. Those photographs will show the new police station where the range is. Attached to that station, it'll show the classroom, interior and exterior view, and also show the layout design for that firearms range.
Thank you, Chief. Questions for the mayor or the chief? Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair to the chief, just wanted to know, to be clear, is this a building that's already in process to be constructed, or?
The building itself is complete. Yes, so
Okay.
this is just to outfit the interior of the building. Yes.
Just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
We did ours out in Strongsville, and it's quite an expense, but it's a great thing to have for your forces and the surrounding cities that would use that. So, Mr. Miller?
So, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, can you say a little bit more about how broad a range of other communities will be able to access this facility, and how will they do so?
I'm confident that the West Shore communities, which are 6 of us, Bay Village, Rocky River, Westlake, Fairview Park, Lakewood, and us, will have regular access. We wouldn't say no. Scheduling might get to be, an issue one day, but we won't say no to anyone from the county who is interested in use of the range. But I predict that the West Shore will be most frequently requesting access.
And when this project was first designed, did the project contain enough money to both do the building and build out the range? And because of COVID-19 and supply chain and cost escalation, you did not have enough money to do the range, or or was it planned sequentially from the beginning that the funding for the range would be determined later?
My understanding that, my understanding that cost overruns because of delays, supply chain delays, and increased costs prevented the completion of the range.
Thank you for being here, Chief, and also to all the folks from Rocky River. Just a few comments. Number one, I think it's a very worthwhile venture of a project, and I support it fully. I just want to comment too on the mayor's comments about making this a streamlined process and how she was glad that it was. While we might have taken some criticism from a particular news outlet, I still think that this is what mayors want. They want efficiency. They want to move these projects along. She mentioned that it was shovel-ready, and we all know that with the pandemic, delays in the process and delays in construction literally cost millions by the week. And I think the ability of a council person to meet or speak with a mayor and other city officials and to be able to move this along is a very efficient way of doing things. And so I'm glad it was recognized by the mayor, and I support this project. Thank you.
Anything further?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make all of the representatives aware that that your council person, Nan Baker, would have certainly been here and supports this project, but she's a little bit under the weather and out ill at this time.
Mr. President.
Thank you. And I just want to take a moment just to, one, thank you for being here and to bring such a thorough presentation. I appreciated it. And I just want you to know I support this project and all of these projects that we're going to be looking at today. So I just like to have my name added to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you'd add the president and myself as co-sponsors, I'd appreciate that.
If you could add my name as well, thank you.
Tuma. And as Mr. Tuma was referring, some people just don't think we're doing the right thing with these dollars, but those people aren't in the cities that we represent. And those people don't talk to the people that we represent, and those people don't know the people that we represent and the needs of those people that we represent, and that we take our time to put our names on the ballot to maybe fend off somebody that they would like better. But somehow the people that we represent keep putting us here. And we're doing what we're supposed to be doing for the people that we represent. And I couldn't be happier than to provide the dollars that have been afforded to us. Once-in-a-lifetime dollars, we're never going to see it again, to let the cities decide, the people in the cities that we represent decide how they could use these dollars to the best of their advantages. And I, again, can't be happier than to listen to the mayor and her council and the people she represents to get projects like this moving forward and done. And the sooner we get these dollars in the hands of those that we represent, the better, because costs are going through the ceiling. The project in Strongsville alone in a 2-month period went up 15%. So, Chief, I am glad to be part of this, as my colleagues I'm sure are also, and we will champion this through to the full council. If everybody's comfortable with moving this forward to the full council under second reading, I'll accept the motion in a second.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion to move resolution 2022-0222 to the full council for second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Thank you. 2022-0251.
Resolution number 2022-0251, making an award on requisition number 7583 to Keith Commissary Network in the amount of $2,400,000 of estimated revenue for jail commissary services.
Good afternoon, council members. Donna Cleel, Sheriff's Finance Manager. This, to give you just a brief example of what the commissary department is at the sheriff's department, it's pretty much in two parts. You have the jail part of the commissary, which is where all the inventory is held. That's where the inventory is packaged. That is where once it's packaged by the COs and by trustees, then it is delivered to the inmates. And each pod has a certain day they can shop, and then they can get their commissary delivered. And the second part is the commissary finance office, which is the portion that I oversee, where you basically pay the bills and you issue release checks to the inmates once they're out of jail, if they have any money left in their commissary account. So it's in two parts. What this RFP stands to do initially is to take the first part, the jail part. We want to outsource that jail part to Keefe Commissary Network. We did an RFP. We had 3 proposals. This portion, what it would do is the inventory would no longer be on site at the Justice Center. The inventory would now stay with Keefe. They would get the inmates' orders via electronic kiosks that are going to be put in all the pods. And once they receive the orders, then they will package them. They will bring them down to the Justice Center. They will be led into the jail, probably escorted by a CO, and they will deliver to the inmates. And this is going to accomplish several things. And we will no longer be housing the inventory, which we've had some issues with in the past. And also, this is going to free up several corrections officers, because these commissary positions are bid positions where the corrections officers every 6 months bid on these positions. And it's usually about 5 corrections officers. So this is going to free up 5 corrections officers to go back into the jail for other things. So again, this is kind of what we're trying to do. Now, once this gets up and running, the sheriff can evaluate if he wants to then outsource the second part in phase 2, which would be the finance portion. That's something that's an option for us. But right now, this first portion is for the jail portion, the packaging, the receiving the orders, the packaging the orders, the delivering the orders to the jail, to the inmates. That's the first portion we're trying to do at this point.
And if we do move forward on this, then it necessitates that 0004 is unnecessary.
Correct. The one where we wanted to donate expired items would be a moot point at this point, because we would no longer be housing the inventory. The inventory would be staying with the vendor.
Okay. And I've cleared that through legal, that if we do move forward with this, we'll just remove 0004. Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair to Donna, you spoke about a part 2. Just
Basically, what I was saying is, if once this got up and running, if the sheriff said, look, I want to outsource the entire commissary, which means our commissary finance office would then, what would happen is that now Keefe would handle all the finance portion also. So instead of us having a finance office and receiving the invoices from Keefe and paying it, they would just instead be almost like Securus. They would be sending us a commission check. So the finance office would no longer be necessary at that point. But that would be farther down the road, and that would be something if the sheriff or whomever decided to move forward with that. Right now, because we don't want to bite off too much more than we could chew at this point, we're just going to do what we feel is the most important part, which is the inventory part and the delivering to the inmates and things like that, which is the jail portion of the commissary.
so for the finance department, would we still need them to do other duties, or?
Yes, the finance department has a couple of clerks and then one manager, and absolutely we could move the clerks. As you know, we're desperate for clerks at the sheriff's department. So yeah, they would be needed. Nobody would be losing jobs.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none. If everything's in order, I'll accept the motion for Resolution 2022-0251 to the full council for second reading.
If we could ask for a suspension of rules, that would be great.
Does anybody have a concern with that?
So moved.
I'll withdraw that.
Second.
Resolution 2022-0251 to the full council under second reading suspension.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
2022-0252.
Resolution number 2022-0252, authorizing an amendment to contract number 228 with the Metro Health System for correctional healthcare services for the Cuyahoga County Jail System.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greg Huth, with the Law Department. Just a little bit of background here. The county and Metro first entered into an agreement with Metro to provide health services at the jail in 2019. There have been a couple of amendments along the way. I think you may remember that back in May, we were here with a short-term amendment just to get us over the hump until basically this date, and to put some funds into the contract that we had used out of the CARES Act to provide some services there. So this amendment it was actually contemplated in the original document. A 2-year extension of that 2019 amendment, or 2019 contract, was contemplated at that time, so that's what this document is. So it does those two really kind of big things. It extends this to May 8th or so of 2024, and adds about $30 million plus into the contract to, we hope, cover the health services at the jail over the next couple of years. This does also do a couple of other things. We've been working closely with the prosecutor's office to kind of suss out some best practices that we've incorporated into this document. There's a contract monitor in here now. As I said, last time we were in, we had to plug some money into that contract for some previous spending we had done. Well, part of the purpose of the contract monitor, so that doesn't happen again. And also, we want somebody with a little bit of medical billing experience, so it's easier for us to talk with Metro and Metro to talk with us when there are questions about that. There's also a clinical care monitor built into this contract, something new, but again, it's one of those best practices that we've learned over the last few years, and it will ultimately result in better services to the detainees there. And again, it's one of those things where it's just a good practice for both parties on either side of the contract to understand what's expected of them as we go along. That's primarily what this amendment accomplishes, and we've got the sheriff and Donna, who you met, and Tanisha Gates from the sheriff's office, and Dr. Bruner and Mr. Tobin from Metro here. They can answer the really hard questions. So.
Questions for the law director? This might be the easiest $30 million in the world, huh? I'm glad that Mr. Greenspan is here. He was on the team earlier when we first started, and we're fighting tooth and nail for Metro to come into the jail. And those were the early war days, and he left us too soon before we could get it done. But we did get it done through Dr. Boutros, who, in my opinion, was an angel from heaven, sent to us for the short period in which he stayed with us, and he'll soon be leaving, and we wish him the best of luck as he moves forward with his life. But without him and without Metro, I don't think we would be in a position to be saving the lives that I anticipate we are saving over there. The untold stories are great stories because they don't turn into the lawsuits that we all read about and the negative things that we would be reading about. Things do happen, we understand that, but with the advancement of the medical treatment from Metro Hospital in our jail, in my opinion, we have absolutely saved lives over there, and I couldn't be happier. And again, with Mr. Greenspan laying the groundwork for that battle, it was well worth all the trials and tribulations that we went through to get it done. And I couldn't be happier than to be part of that team to move it forward. Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair to Law Director Huth, could you provide us, and off the clock, of course, the total dollar amount that I guess we give Metro and their contracts for jail work that they do?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, the Councilman, it's actually stated in this amendment that I thought it was in the legislation, but maybe it's not. Over the total through 2024, we're estimating almost 86 million.
So that's everything that they do for us medically, right?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Any further questions or concerns? And looking at the timeline, you want this to move forward?
Yes, please.
Mr. Miller.
My question is whether the work that Metro does includes mental health, or is that provided separately?
My understanding is it is. If I'm wrong, does anybody want to?
Okay, thank you.
It does.
Yes, the contract includes providing mental health and addiction care within the jail. Oh, I'm Dr. Julia Bruner from Metro Health, Senior Vice President for Behavioral Health and Correctional Medicine.
Would that be dental services as well?
Yeah, we have on-site dental services as well. Radiology services.
Just on a question in terms of, I know for our employees, it's the cost for prescription drugs are really like off the roof. Does Metro specifically engage in those contract negotiations, or is that us doing that for those prescriptions?
So the pharmacy is managed by Metro Health, and so the cost of the drugs is a part of the contract. It's a pass-through cost in relation to the meds.
Nothing further? And what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, due to the deadlines, yeah, we'd like this could be passed on second reading at your next meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bruner.
Thank you.
Hearing no further questions or concerns, I'll accept a motion for Resolution 2022-0252 to the full council under second reading suspension.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. 2022-0253.
Resolution number 2022-0253, authorizing an amendment to contract number 2576 with WellPath LLC for healthcare and management services at the Juvenile Court Detention Center.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm Sarah Sijic, Deputy Court Administrator and Chief Legal Counsel for the Juvenile Courts. Just a brief kind of summary for our amendment today. We have had WellPath services in the detention center since the beginning of 21. I have a more detailed timeline as to the nature of this particular amendment, and what I am assuming is your main concern is its delay. And so I won't read that point by point, but I'm, to summarize, back in June of last year, the doctor and nurse practitioner at WellPath kind of unexpectedly sent an email saying that effective immediately, they would no longer be serving patients, which took both us and WellPath by surprise. Their explanation was that they refused to sign a waiver document allowing them to have their cell phones in secured detention. They would not be negotiated on that point. So that day, I FedExed a notice to WellPath saying that they were in breach of their contract, that they weren't providing medical services. WellPath then responded back with a list of things that they were going to do to remedy that immediately, and that was fine until then in September they issued us a 30-day termination notice of the contract. Obviously, we can't operate our detention center without medical services, so we contacted county administration immediately, and we are, grateful for the administration's assistance and support in that process. We had some negotiations with WellPath as to what they were seeking to, continue with their contract. They sent a list of demands to Judge Tom O'Malley, our administrative judge, in the beginning of November, which essentially was an increase in funding retroactive to the date of contract termination in October, plus some additional increases for year 2, which is this year. And so we agreed to those demands. That was what they were requiring in order to stay and provide medical services. We also offered to extend it for an additional 3rd year as a show of good faith. And so that's what this amendment is seeking to do, is to add those additional funds for the 2.5 months in 21, increase the funding for 2022, and extend for a 3rd year next year. The juvenile court did lose half of our fiscal staff at the end of December, So there were some delays on our part with following up with WellPath to get the signed contract. They did not sign it till April. We put it through, had some technical issues with Infor, and then we are here today. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Were their concerns only financial? WellPath?
Yes, they gave us a relatively detailed breakdown as to increase their nursing staff funding. They were having trouble hiring staff willing to do this kind of work, so some of that was sort of an incentive program. They asked for additional funding to increase their insurance premiums, but yes, financial.
Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair to Sarah.
Yes.
I didn't catch your last name.
Sijic.
Okay. Who provided the medical care for the detainees while you were going through these contract negotiations with WellPath?
They continued to provide services, that we had had a few meetings with them, and that they felt they were confident that we were going to come to an agreement, and so they basically withdrew their 30-day termination clause. So we have not lost services.
So have they eradicated the problems with the medical doctors?
Yes, they've brought in a new doctor. They replaced our nurse manager, who actually used to work for UH, and they brought her back. We're all very happy with her, and they have the nurse practitioner position filled as well, yes. And I believe they're fully staffed on nurses, and that they're seeking to, or at least at the time of the request, they wanted to add additional nursing staff, and I believe that those are all fully filled.
You know, I recently visited and toured the facility, so I know that you couldn't bring in your cell phone. I can kind of feel on either side of, how the doctors feel, and safety with the cell phone and all that, but how are they kept safe when they're on the other side? But, I know those are probably difficult choices. I can see on both sides. In terms of WellPath, this specific contract is going to, no, that wasn't what I was going to ask, the same as we have with Metro. Are everything covered, behavioral health, dental, everything under this contract with WellPath?
Everything except we do not offer dental services, although I believe we're in talks with Case Western to work with their dental school. It also does not include mental health services because those are provided to us by the Adams Board at no charge through their vendor, Applewood Services.
And so I'm just trying to compare the jail versus juvenile. Are we taking the children out to get these services, whereas inside the jail, pretty much all the care is done inside?
No, it's all in-house. So Applewood staff actually work at the detention center. We have a dental clinic. It's just not outfitted, or not occupied, I should say, by any particular vendor. We have mobile x-ray for x-ray services, so they come to us. So we handle everything that's non-emergent or like a specialty service where we would take the child out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I'd like to recognize Ms. Simons in attendance. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question on WellPath and whether the nurses in the building in the juvenile detention center can use cell phones to speak to each other while they're working.
Yes, they're allowed to have their phones. We just required that they filled out a form, and the doctor found that problematic.
Okay, can you elaborate on that? Because I understand that there were situations where when the nurses were working and wanted to communicate, if there was a safety issue, that they actually were reprimanded for not, for trying to use their cell phone. Are you telling me that's different now?
No, that was just that they had brought it in without having filled out the waiver document. So, I mean, because their essential issue was that Applewood had their phones and they did not. It's because Applewood filled out the form and they did not.
What exactly does the form say? What is what is it that they need to sign in order to use a cell phone in the detention center?
I have not personally seen it, but my understanding is it's just a very simple, name and the proposed use and why they're seeking an exception from the security policy. It was this, the dispute with the doctor was something that we did not understand why they were having such strong objections to the form because we thought it was a rather perfunctory document. We would have had no objection to them.
Why doesn't the agency wellness just sign a blanket waiver saying that their staff will be able to use cell phones? Why was it necessary or is necessary for each individual to sign a separate document? Whose policy is this?
The detention policy.
And the detention center policy requires each individual employee of your company to sign an individual waiver?
Our employees are not allowed cell phones.
Your
Back.
employee?
Correct.
So my first question was, are they allowed cell phones? So your employees,
Employees are not. The medical staff can if they fill out the request for a waiver,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, I think this is a problem that I would like to get more information on. I mean, I'll get this out of committee, but I need to follow up with what's happening there with these phones and the nurses and the doctors. And I don't think that there's straight policy that makes sense, especially what's gone on with past employees who had some trouble at the Juvenile Detention Center regarding
Can I have
phones.
our court administrator here and our superintendent if you'd like
Well,
to.
Mr. Chair, is that okay? Yes. Committee.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
I'm Brandon Winarchik, Superintendent of the Detention Facility.
Yeah.
So the general security policy is that no one is permitted, but they apply for the exemption. Their primary nurse, their charge nurse, and their doctor had actually brought it up to WellPath's regional representation, and we actually met with them, including their legal counsel. And WellPath saw no need for the phones. They actually advised them that every correspondence that they needed to do, they could take care of with the in-building communication devices and or send emails. Their particular concern that the doctor expressed at the time was a need to communicate with other doctors, but she presented no real-time need for that to happen where you couldn't leave the youth right here and walk to the desk.
Okay, so what I'm hearing now is it's WellPath's policy that employees, or is it the court?
It is the court's policy, but there were two employees of WellPath that
Yes.
complained.
Yes.
Complained with to court administration,
Yes.
to detention administration. WellPath themselves told those two employees that this is not a valid complaint. You are not to take your phones in there. You don't meet this threshold. And then subsequent to that, the two said, we're not providing services if we can't have these. And then we went through.
Well, there's security issues, and like I said, I appreciate you coming up for yes, for the nurses and the doctors should be exempt, and I just don't quite understand why WellPath would, object to that. I'm hearing it's WellPath saying it's the court, and now I'm hearing the court say it's WellPath. Who made decisions about not using the phones?
It's our policy.
I understand that, but there's an exception.
WellPath does not believe an exception is required for their employees as a blanket rule.
So it's WellPath. I understand you have security, that makes sense, but you also have a company you're contracting with. Is there something in your contract that says there cannot be devices used, or there won't be an exception to this? What's in the contract? So WellPath decided that they will not be giving the exemption to their employees.
WellPath told the two employees that were very troubled by our initial decision that they did not meet the threshold for getting the phones in, that they agreed with our decision.
Okay, so WellPath agreed with your decision, that employees should not be an exception. Okay, thanks. I will follow up with this. I think I would like a meeting to discuss this further. I think it's a problem.
Okay. And if you could provide us with the demand letter that they came up with, that would be helpful. When you have it. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm aware that the question of health care services at the Juvenile Detention Center has been an ongoing problem for years, and my question is what you think the prospects are that WellPath is going to be willing to continue providing these services after the end of this contract at the end of 2023? And secondly, whether you've been able to identify any other providers that might be willing to provide these services, because ideally this is something that you would want to bid out and have multiple vendors to choose from.
So WellPath did agree to the third-year extension.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could you step into the
Sure,
microphone?
I apologize. So they did agree to the third-year extension. I think after these conversations that we've had over the past several months, I'm not aware of any objection that they now have. They have new staff, they have additional funding to pay for those staff. So I have a relatively high degree of confidence that they will continue the contract. When we RFP'd this initially, we had no applicants. And then we reached out to St. Vincent, Metro, Cleveland Clinic, United University Hospitals. UH did provide a sort of unofficial offer. It was higher than WellPath's. Plus, we were having, they were our previous provider, and we were having issues with them. So we felt that it was, they kind of gave us a high number as a sort of half-hearted offer. But so one of the reasons we were asking for an additional third-year extension is to give us some time to RFP this out again.
And can you give me an estimate of how much the cost of services was increased in 2022 as opposed to 2021?
There was, even prior to their termination notice, there was a built-in, I believe it was 2%, essentially a COLA. And then as part of their demand to continue providing services, they were requesting an additional $400,000 for the year.
An additional?
$400,000 for 22.
And what was the base amount? How much was 2022?
Initially?
Initially programmed for prior to the $400,000 addition?
About 1.6.
It's about a 25% increase then. And final question, what's your overall level of satisfaction with the services that they're providing?
I would defer to Mr. Winarchi.
The satisfaction at this time is good. As Ms. Sijic initially indicated, there was some transitional difficulties at first, but the new nurse manager that they've brought on board has really facilitated it's kind of back to business as usual, smooth sailing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, follow-up. Thank you. First of all, I would like to see the contract between the court and wellness before the full council meeting, okay? I'd like to look at that. And secondly, are these additional items you discussed in the budget, current budget, your budget?
No.
Where you don't have a budget to cover the costs that you anticipate with wellness?
A WellPath. No, we'll
WellPath.
be pulling it out of our general fund and then probably having to do some shuffling of funding from other places in the court at the end of the third quarter.
Okay. And you don't expect to come back to this body to compensate that budget shortfall, do you?
No.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay. And we'll move this, if you will provide that contract to the councilwoman, I appreciate it. If everybody's comfortable, looking at the timeline, I guess you would like this to be moved quickly.
Yes, please.
Anybody have a concern with that? And it won't be till September, I believe. I believe that'll be it, so. you have a little bit of time to get us that information. Everybody's comfortable, we'll move Resolution 2022-0253 to the full council under second reading suspension.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Against? Thank you. And 2022-0004 is removed. Any miscellaneous business? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, did